Hi, welcome to the second section of George Orwell's 1984 with Emily F., Emily K., Gwen, and Maddie. Take it away, Emily.
So in this section, it starts out with Winston going to a pub and talking to an old man. Winston is trying to learn about the past before Big Brother, and he wants to find out the truth, and the man is no help. Winston goes to a secondhand store again, and he buys a paperweight. The store owner takes him to a private room and shows him a print of St. Clement's Church. On the way home, he sees a dark-haired girl. He thinks that she's following him. Winston contemplates suicide, but then he thinks about O'Brien and how there are other people like him who hate Big Brother. Chapter 2. The dark-haired girl slips Winston a note that says, "I love you." So Winston comes up with this plan to sit by her at the canteen. They talk, and then they meet outside, and the girl gives Winston instructions to go to a place where they can meet.
So we will be starting our discussion by talking about the character, and the character we'll be focusing on is Winston again. So what motivates this character in this section?
We think definitely it's different from the past section because he was doing like small forms of rebellion and he was just kind of like doing it for himself. But now this section, since he met the dark-haired girl and she told him that he loved him, I feel like his form of rebellions and like his plans that he was planning to do in the future and how he was going to go about his life are completely thrown out the window, and now he has a completely different like plot and life. So yeah.
And he's more motivated by curiosity as well, because one of the forms of rebellion that he did was he went to the Pearl District and saw an old man and talked to him and tried to figure out if he could, asked him if he could tell him anything about what it was like before Big Brother. And just being curious about that and just trying to find out anything he could about life before the totalitarian government.
I feel like there is a shift sort of in this section because at the beginning he like wanted to like find out more about the past and stuff, and like that was his form of rebellion. But then once he found out that the dark-haired girl loved him, he kind of wanted to rebel by like being with her and like love and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. But he's been like curious throughout this entire thing.
So for the setting, the first question is, how does setting affect the mood of the narrative?
Okay, I think it definitely in the section you can see more where like the setting or the almost the feel of the narration is drummed up by suspense and tenseness by like basically how much teleprompters or like how many cameras or how many recording devices are like put on the characters in the scenes, because there's the one scene when they were in the huge crowd and there were teleprompters like everywhere and they're all watching him, but then or telescreens and there were then you saw like the other scenes when he was like in the private room and other sections where there were none, and he even though he was still nervous at that point, he was a lot less tense than when he knew he was being watched at like 50,000 angles.
Mm-hmm. You can definitely see him like relax like more like when he was in the private room at the secondhand store than when he was like in front of like the prisoners and outside. But I also think it kind of gave him like a thrill sort of in a way, like because he was like, oh, doing something rebellious in front of everybody.
Yeah, I like the whole mood of the room and the shop in general. It just seems kind of like it's out of place in the story, and I think that's really cool because he can go there and be calm for a little bit and just like be surrounded pretty much just by nothing except relics of the past, and just the fact that it's just kind of out of time when everything else is so like controlled. That's just one little place that he can go that's peaceful.
It's also what like typical like rooms would look like before it written, so you could see like the relatability, like when the author wrote this, like something that they could relate to instead of the society that was like completely like distant. So there were still parts that like the readers could relate to.
Look closely at shifts in setting, time, and atmosphere. How do these shifts affect characters? The intensity just kind of went up a notch once he went to find the old man. Like once he saw the old man and talked to him and started taking a more active form of rebellion, and just the fact that he met another person and they had to plan so carefully how they would meet.
And plus, at that point, when he was meeting the old man, he started skipping like the late night things that he was supposed to be at the place that he works, and so like that would just start raising caution. And the fact that he like went to see that man brought up a whole nother level of like suspicion and like intensity that was happening.
Plot. Describe the conflicts in the narrative. Do these arise from context, character, or both?
I think Winston has some like internal conflict within himself because he's like, should I rebel, should I not? And then there's also the part where he's like, should I like commit suicide or not? Because he's like so afraid of like Big Brother and like the thought police finding him. And then when the girl tells him that or slips him a note that says I love you, there's like conflict within himself because before that he wanted to kill her, but then once he got the note he was like, oh, actually, you know what, she's like pretty attractive, like I like her now. So there's a conflict within himself over his feelings of the dark-haired girl.
And then with the dark-haired girl, like obviously the internal conflict, like you said, but then also it could possibly be external conflict because we don't know anything about her. She could be doing a trap or something.
Like he only like at this point he's literally only had a conversation with her a total of probably 30 seconds, and it's like, is that enough to like trust her? Like even though she's going out on a limb and saying all these things, like can he trust her is a real like conflict.
All we know is that she wears the red sash for the Anti-Sex League. She works in a different part of the building, and she also plans their meeting out. She's the one who plans it in a very what was it called? Military-like style. So it's like, she's really thought this out. Has she done this before? Do we want to explore that topic of like, has she done this? Why would she have done this before? Is she again planning a trap?
Yeah. My idea is that she's like maybe like part of a rebellion or something to get rid of like Big Brother and the government, or like something small at least, rebellious, because like she has this like place like completely like thought of, and like she doesn't even like really like have to think about it, and yeah.
Yeah, so there is still that external conflict as well. I mean, how does the narrative invoke Logos and pathos to move the story forward? So I think Logos and the fact that he actively went and saw someone old enough to have lived before Big Brother and tried to find out from that guy's experiences if like what they'd been told in the history books and like through the media was actually true or not. Like he was taking a more active role in trying to figure out what was real and what wasn't.
And he was like logically thinking it through. Like he wasn't just like making jump decisions. He was making sure he like went at a time, or like whenever he saw someone that like could potentially report him, he like went the other way, and like he was making sure that he was going through this like logically and wasn't just gonna get caught right away.
I think it's really interesting like how good he is at this. Like he has like these whole like plans to like not get caught and everything, and he goes about it very logically. Like even when like the girl like slips him the note and he's like, oh my gosh, like I want to know more about this girl, and like he's like very confused and like he has a lot of like emotions going on, but his plan is like still very logical. He's like, I'm gonna like go to a canteen where like she's not by telescreens, there's nobody else there, we'll talk. And even though like there's like other factors, like he's still very logical, and like he knows that he can't trust the media because he has rewritten some of it, so he goes and talks to people.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think, how long has he been kind of against Big Brother? Like it kind of started out when we saw him first rebelling, but how long? Yeah, by the journal and first rebelling, but how long has he actually been thinking about doing it? And how long has he been wanting to do it?
Yeah, because they are very like thought out. Like that's not like oh my gosh, there's somebody coming, I'll do this. Like you have to like think through that, like all the scenarios.
And like he already had a place in his house where he could hide from the telescreen.
Yeah.
How far will he go?
It's just, yeah.
And then the girl as well. She's very logical. Like we talked about before. Like is she like part of Big Brother? Is she trapping him, or is she part of a rebellion, or is she just like that? Like who even knows? But she's a very logical person. And what do you guys think about pathos?
I think there's definitely a lot of like relatability. Like when she gives him the note, like that is such like a serious thing to say, and like that's something like you can relate to his like reactions. Like I don't even know what to do now. Like my entire like thing is like been changed, and like I feel like that gives a lot of like pathos towards the reader. It's just like the credibility of like how he responded to that. But then there's also like the different like sections, and like they had in the section the pathos with the room and like the private room, and we said like before how it was a room that like in the time that it was written what a normal room would look like, so you could see like the pathos and the relatability to that room, and like some it's a part of the world that like the reader can like recognize while the rest of the society is like not recognizable.
Like, I feel like Winston is kind of like driven by like his emotions of like curiosity for the beginning when he went to like the secondhand store, and then I also think he was curious about the note, and then he was also like driven by like his emotions of kind of like love and like lust.
And like, it kind of makes you think, what would you do in his situation? I'd probably react in a lot of the same way. It was just like being frustrated and confused and scared about what he's doing and what he wants to do and needs to do. It makes him really relatable. So for point of view, how does the point of view affect what the narrator reveals and doesn't?
So it's third person limited, so we only hear about Winston and his ideas. So like we only know like his thoughts. Like for example, the dark haired girl, like we have no idea like if it's a trap, rebellion, she actually does love him, she doesn't love him. Like she's just a big mystery to us. Like we don't even know her name because Winston doesn't know her name. And I feel like if we did know all that information about her, then we wouldn't be as intrigued by the story and the plot.
Yeah, the mystery is we definitely feel the mystery of this because, like you said, we know exactly what he knows because it's third person limited. And so his kind of quest to find out what happened in the past and like it could be, I don't know what I'm saying.
Basically,
Just go on.
the level of like mystery and like suspense has like been upped because it's no longer just Big Brother, it's now this woman, and like is she for him, is she against him, like what is her actual motives here.
And then he also has the conflict of, oh hey, she's also a lot younger than I am, so this might not be all that ethical.
Okay. How does the narrator feel about the characters? What signals does the narrator give to show that feeling? So for the old man, the old man Prole, he meant, like, so he came in with the expectation, like, when he first saw him, that he was, like, he knew what he was doing, he was wise, he lived through the time before Big Brother, but then he actually started talking to him, and kind of was nothing like he expected, and he kind of just got really frustrated with him, because it turned out to be a little not all there.
A little crazy.
I think he was like, Winston was pretty disappointed that this like old man didn't know when that happened, because he was like, I mean, that's really like the only link he can trust, really, and he can't like trust this old man because he isn't all there. So I think he was really disappointed by that.
It makes you think like whether or not like Big Brother like made all these people that were above that age like condition them to like not say anything, and that's why this guy was just kind of acting crazy and being like trying to like brush him off, or whether he was like just completely crazy, or just like whether or not that guy had some intelligence, not in some intelligence, but like whether or not he knew what he was doing or whether he was just kind of not all there.
Do you think that if Winston had had more time and less pressure on him, he would have gotten some answers out of the old man eventually?
I feel like he did get a couple beers in him though. Like I feel like
Yeah.
he was buying him a couple
pretty
drinks
drunk.
and he was drunk at that point. So if he had any censor at that point,
Yeah.
or yeah.
I don't think
Yeah,
he
I
really
think-
knew anything besides like really small details that like
Yeah, he
were
was just-
really vague.
Yeah,
like
he was really
history-wise.
focused on certain instances that weren't really helpful.
Right.
So I honestly don't think so.
No. I think part of it was like his old age. And
Yeah, and the fact that like the Proles are just so uncontrolled and left
Right.
alone, I can't really see
And they're
that
not really
being
like
that
educated.
realistic. Yeah.
So like they're
They
like,
probably just
easily
don't worry.
brainwashed. So
Yeah.
if
They don't
he
think they're
probably
a threat.
doesn't like think it happened, or he just forgets and he just remembers the brainwash stuff.
Okay, so how does Winston feel about the girl he met? Obviously, he was really afraid of her. He thought she was like part of a thought police because she was following him, and he kind of wanted to kill her at one point. And then she told him that she loved him, and he got really confused. So, like, he was kind of battling with himself, like is this a good thing to do? And he tried as hard as he could to talk to her in the canteen and try and just figure out what was happening.
I think it's interesting how it kind of goes like a complete 180 from like wanting to kill her to like being like, oh,